Good morning. It is 9:01. We are a little tardy this morning, but I'm going to call to order the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District Board of Fire Commissioners meeting for October 17th. At this time, Mr. Joe Cammon, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, sir? To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Chief. All right. Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Of course. Bob Lucy, Chair.
Here.
Marcia Berg-Bigler, Vice Chair.
Here.
Katie Jung is absent. Vaughn Hartung.
Here.
Jeannie Herman.
Here.
All right.
Charlie Moore, Fire
Here.
Chief.
Here.
David Wattsfield, Deputy District Attorney.
Here.
Sir, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right. Chief, we are on to agenda item 3.
Item number 3 is public comment. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment?
Do we have any public comment signed in at this time, Madam Clerk?
There is no public comment.
Thank you so much. We will move on to item 4, Commissioner and Fire Chief's announcements. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item number 4 is Commissioner Fire Chief's announcements, requests for information, topics for future agendas, and statements relating to items not on the agenda. No discussion among commissioners will take place on this item.
Chief, any announcements at this time?
I do have 2 announcements and 1 topic for a future agenda. I've been in touch with Mike Brown, and he has requested his presentation on the Verdi fire be deferred until November. He's still actively putting the report together. And to item number 7, the National Weather Service has asked that they defer their presentation to November. They just had a conflict this morning.
Okay, great.
And then as a topic for a future agenda, the District Attorney, Mr. Wattsfield, and I have met with our counterparts in Sierra County, California, to discuss a renewal of their contract for service from the district. The clerk will hand out a map and some calculations from rough calculations that the district has put together. But the issue for the agenda next month will be, how do we come to a fair price to charge them? Currently, it's only $10,000, and we have no idea whether that's about right, whether that's low, or whether we should be charging much more. So there are just really 2 small areas within Sierra County, one in the Cold Springs area and one in Verdi, California, where we will be taking a look at. So staff is working on a methodology whereby we would try to make it equal from what our taxpayers are paying to what taxpayers in California would be charged. And so staff will be working hard on developing that new agreement to bring to you in November.
Great. Thank you. Any discussions from any of the commissioners? Commissioner Hartung.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I had the great pleasure of attending the Fire Prevention Open House on Saturday, October 14th. I was able to, I started in the city of Sparks and went into their pancake feed, which was wonderful. It would be nice if we could somehow combine a feed with them at some point in the future. It's a great event, and electeds were out flipping pancakes, and it was a very, very well attended event, and I was honored to be there. I also got out to Lemon Valley and then made a stop in Sun Valley, and then finished the day in Spanish Springs, where Raven had a static display. It was a wonderful event, great turnout. I know you were, Mr. Chairman, in Arrow Creek with the Bounce House crew, which I understand was standing room only.
Yes, it was.
And so I was glad, and I know Commissioner Herman was able to attend some places also. So it was, I think we covered all of our bases that day. So thank you, Chief, for organizing that. And then, Chief, at some point, I want to just try to understand what our timing is on upgrades to certain stations, specifically 17. As you're well aware, 17 is the second busiest station in the Corps, and it's in desperate need, especially the living quarters. The firehouse itself is okay, but the living quarters are, they're, I don't want to call them substandard because they're not substandard, but they could use a remodel, fresh coat of paint and some other things, so to speak. So, and that's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Herman, Commissioner Burke-Bigler, anything? You know, Chief, I also want to commend Commissioner Herman Commissioner Hartung for all the time he spent Saturday. He really did the whirlwind tour and hit all of our stations. So, you know, Commissioner Hartung was a strong advocate this weekend of all of the events that the district held and made the rounds for sure. And that was, very commendable. So thank you for taking the time to do that.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we did it as a team. You guys were able to, not everybody can attend those things. So
Well, I only did one, so I mean, you hit 3 and a pancake breakfast. So I mean, you did. That's pretty. That's legitimate right there. I mean, that's
and
that's
Commissioner Herman was in Verdi,
in Verdi.
which was very important.
Yeah. So one thing I would like to bring back, though, one of the items I would like to discuss, and something that has come up recently, is discussions about future placements of fire departments. You know, I know the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Governing Board is going through the regional plan update. Thank you. And there's discussions about the city of Reno and their placement of new and future fire stations, what they would be submitting for the regional plan update. I'd like to know, one, what the discussions have been between Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District and the city of Reno in regards to those future planned stations, why the locations that have been selected, how do they coincide with a joint plan for both districts as we go forward, because obviously, when we've said it from this dais, every commissioner, many a time, that our funding for the district is self-reliant on our unincorporated citizens. And so placements of stations is needs to be strategic and needs to be understood, because it does impact the way we service our unincorporated citizens. So I'd like to have a report on that, our very next meeting, to discuss that subject wholly and spend some time with it in regards to future planning for stations and how we're going to service the district and how we're going to work or coincide with the city of Reno. Okay. And then, other than that, I do want to thank our interim fire marshal for all the time she spent this weekend putting together the event. And we had an amazing Sparky at the Arrow Creek Station. Miss Moore spent the weekend, or I shouldn't say Miss Moore did, but the kids still think Sparky was there, but Mrs. Moore did a phenomenal job. We joked the entire time. It was, if you know Chief's wife, she's a wonderful person and just a beautiful person to be around, but loves to talk to you. And I think for a couple hours not being able to speak because of her costume must have been just absolutely kin. And I think that her only recourse was that she got to give hugs to every little kid that was there. And I think that was the benefit for her. So I want to thank. It truly was a family event, not just the families that attended, but our family at Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District all came out and supported. We had off-duty firefighters there. We had on-duty. We had fire marshal, and it was a great event, and it was well attended by everybody. Even Miss Holland decided that she was going to snake my picture when I told her not to, many a times. But it was great and well attended, and I want to thank all the commissioners and staff and everybody who put some time into that. So, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Did you have a fire helmet on when she took your picture?
I had a plastic one on, the little kid size, unfortunately. It was the only one that could, yeah, I mean, there's not much there that you need to protect anyways.
Well, I appreciate all of my teammates filling in and taking on all of those. I unfortunately was otherwise occupied this weekend, so couldn't help, but I I'm sure it was a lot more fun than what I was doing, I can tell you for sure. I wanted to bring to the attention of the members that, as you know, we have been looking at the possibility of moving our fire district into a GID so that we could take advantage of some of the GID rules. We have run into, shall we say, a few complications with the interpretation of the state tax department with what happens to the current C-tax that we're getting, and it looks like it's going to be perhaps impossible for us to do that. So we will not be able to take advantage of some of the issues related to being a GID versus being a C-24? Oh, 47. 474, right. Okay, so I wanted to make sure you guys knew that we still are looking at that. We've been working with the district attorney, who's been extremely helpful, and Chief has been working on it. As you know, that was an issue that I took on behalf of the commission and of the board, and so I just thought it would be a good idea to update you on what's going on. And I'm glad that you brought forward the issue of the regional plan and the Reno City fire stations. I am a little concerned about the way it's written in the plan, and I wonder if we don't want to really review that, have our attorney review that also, and take a look at it. So when you bring it back to the board to discuss, if you would include turning it over to our district attorney to kind of look at the whole plan, because there may be some things that we need to put into our plan as we're moving forward on that. So it's probably a really good time to do this right now, because I know our team is working on the language that we're proposing for the plan. So thank you very much for bringing that up, Mr. Chair. And that's all. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no further discussion from the commissioners or the chief, we will move on to item 5, our consent agenda. At this time, Chief, is there any discussion by the commissioners for items to be pulled or further discussions on consent? I have a motion by Commissioner Hartung, second by Vice Chair Burkbiegler.
Public comment?
Do we have any public comments signed in?
There is no public comment signed in.
Thank you so much. Seeing no further public comment, looking for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right. Chief, we're on to item 6.
Item 6 is the IAFF Local 3895 report, and it looks like Mr. Thayer and Mr. Sieben, just Mr. Thayer.
Good morning, Mark Thayer. For the record, I'm the treasurer of IFF Local 3895. I know you're used to seeing Ian Satterfield here. Unfortunately, fortunately, he's in the National Fire Academy in Harrisburg, Maryland. He's taking some leadership courses. So I'm filling his spot. I'll be as brief as I can. Real quickly, we just want to make an announcement. Once again this year, we're doing a joint fundraiser for the Northern Nevada Children's Cancer Foundation. That'll be held in Incline during the paramedic refresher at the end of November. We do this every year with our brothers at Local 139 up in Incline. It's a blackjack tournament, and the benefits go to the Northern Nevada Children's Cancer Foundation. So if you have the opportunity to make it out to that, it's a fun event. We've done it for, this will be the 5th year, or 6th year now that we've done it.
What's the date on that?
November 30th,
November 30th.
and it'll be at the Hyatt in Incline.
Great.
Second thing I have on my list is, as you can tell, the leaves are turning, the weather's getting cooler, and we're thankful that we finally slowed down. It's been a busy summer. We're very proud of the work that we did this summer, but we're thankful that fall's here. And lastly, I wanted to mention that we know the department is looking for a change in a payroll program that works better with our TeleSAP system, and so we fully support that. We just wanted to let Chief know and the commission know that we are behind that, and we look forward to a simpler system. Any questions from the commission?
Seeing none. All right. Thank you, Mr. Thayer.
Very much.
Have a good day.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Chief, we are on to item 7.
Item 7 will be tabled, Mr. Chairman, and we can move on to item number 8.
Okay. Item 8.
8 is discussion possible direction to staff on the fire chief report to include the following items related to fire district operations for possible action. Item 8.1, Station 14 and 39 update. Station 39 in Joy Lake, similar to Commissioner Hartung's comments on 17, Station 39 was in sore need of an upgrade. I want to compliment Bill Wardell, who is the county's capital projects manager, who did a phenomenal job for us in coordinating the plans and the contractor, and we came out at the end of the day with a very, very good product. The station was pretty beat up. We had a lot of damage from woodpeckers on the outside. The paint had deteriorated. The stone veneer was falling off, and on the inside, it just was not a gender-friendly station. We only had one restroom. The kitchen was not functional. So the total amount we spent on that was about $330,000, and it really is a brand-new station as a result of that. So if you have a chance to stop by Station 39, we'd love to show it off to you. Station 14 is coming out of the ground. The masonry is going up. We're going vertical, and I believe will likely be framed in and enclosed by sometime in January. So we're still looking around May or June for grand opening, and I'm very, very pleased with the way that that station is progressing.
Good.
8.2, Mr. Chairman, you had asked for a discussion on run card matrix and how we design the system whereby we dispatch engines to any particular call. I have to say that a run card matrix is really old technology, and I've said many times before that the direction that the district needs to go on dispatching is automatic vehicle location, such that the closest agency to the call can be dispatched. The way the run card works is we simply pick the number of engines that need to go to that particular call, such as a structure fire, we would dispatch 4 engines. The dispatcher will see if one of those 4 closest engines is busy. If not, it goes to the next closest and the next closest and the next closest, which they're not always necessarily the closest engine. So there are many, many, I'd say on a daily basis, that we can be closer to Sparks. Sparks can be closer to one of our calls. Reno can be closer to one of our calls, and we can be closer to Reno on one of their calls. But it doesn't get dispatched that way. It gets dispatched based on these run cards. And so if there's going to be a call for another agency, it has to be done manually through a mutual aid request, unless the run card has been built already to request that agency, such as it exists for our relationship with the city of Reno. We dispatch automatically for structure and brush, going back to the legislation that we did and negotiated that agreement, I think, some 2 years ago. We are on the cusp of doing closest unit dispatching with the city of Sparks. They've upgraded their stations to a paramedic level of service now, so there's not going to be any difference in the level of service when we have a medical call, so you'll still have a paramedic show up. I'm very, very excited about that, and I really do hope that our relationship with Sparks and our rolling out of AVL will really show the region what is possible with that kind of technology. And it's where we need to head with the city of Reno, because the boundaries are simply complicated. They've evolved into where we can have a fire station that's just a few feet away from a city of Reno jurisdiction, and vice versa in many, many locations throughout the area. So the technology is in place to do automatic vehicle location. It's perhaps a little bit more complicated between us and the city of Sparks, although I think we've solved most of those problems, and again, we're ready to launch in about the next 30 days to give it a trial run. So all you really need to do is install a GPS on each of the engines or police cars or even the ambulance, and the dispatcher then would be able to see the closest unit, and the computer would pick the closest unit to the call. So there's really no guesswork. And if you look at the matrices that I've given you in the chief's report, I mean, it's a complicated system whereby you have to go and find the next closest engine if the closest engine is busy. So again, it's technology that's many, many decades old, and for the region, if we really want to improve our service to our citizens, AVL is where it's at. Nevertheless, we have made some improvements to the run card matrices in the interim until we can get AVL and we can get everybody to agree to it. which I know is not going to be easy. Nevertheless, in some locations where we know that the city of Reno can be second due for us, such as in Verdi, such as in Hidden Valley, and other places within the area, we have added them as an automatic resource to be dispatched because they may be the second closest fire truck available in a structure fire. So those changes we have made. I know there has been some discussion in down south in Duck Hill and in Washoe Valley with Carson City. Carson City has always been an automatic aid partner for us in structure fires, so nothing's really going to change there because it works fairly well. And there is an automatic gate agreement between Carson City and REMSA and also with us with respect to medicals. So quite often we're dispatching the closest unit down in Carson City, although it's not quite as automatic because Carson City's on a different system, dispatching system than is Washoe County. So the real problem in getting AVL is that each dispatch center has to be on the same software and has to be using AVL and has to be on the same technology. But I think we're a whole lot closer than we were, I'd say, about 3 years ago.
Great.
Mr. Chair.
Madam Vice Chair.
Chief, is this something we're going to need to go to the legislature to address? I know in Las Vegas, there are numerous fire departments, and yet they all interact with each other. They all appear to be on the same system so that they can use the AVL system. And is this something we need to go to the legislature and say, let's fix this? First, let me say, I really always hate asking the legislature to do our business, but I am concerned that we're not able to get this done from a Carson City perspective, from a Lyon County perspective, from, Story County perspective. This is not just as we continue to grow at the rate we're growing, this is not just an issue between Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke-Bickler. I don't sense any reluctance on the part of Carson City to want to do AVL. It may just be, with that particular agency, it may be an issue of upgrading to Tiburon.
Yeah.
I assume they're not on Tiburon right now. I don't believe they are, but although I could be wrong, is a substantial investment for them. So there's some funding that could be in the way. But with respect to Reno, Sparks, and TM, and even with law enforcement, with Reno PD, Sparks PD, and Sheriff, I don't believe that there's any technological impediments in the way of being able to do that. So I think before you go to the legislature, I think it needs to be a topic to discuss with your counterparts in Sparks and Reno and see if there's an interest in wanting to do that. There certainly is an interest between Chief Maples at the City of Sparks and me to do that. There's no reason to send 2 engines to, say, a diabetic emergency. I mean, there's more responders there than you would possibly need. So one paramedic engine is fully capable of responding to that, particularly when they're closer. So there are many calls like that that happen every single day to where we're sending too many resources or we're not sending the closest resource. Mm-hmm. So I think where it starts is a discussion with your counterparts on councils. And if no progress is made, perhaps that's an option for you.
So, Mr. Chair, maybe this is an issue we need to take on and see if we can't set up some meetings with key players in the cities and see if we can't address this issue. Maybe we can get it on with all 3 of us.
And I agree, Madam Chair, Vice Chair. I think this is something we need to do because it feels like we're a car going down the road with square tires, very clunky, and you look at the complications of the run cards and how challenging are. And, at the same time, the only people that really suffer from this is the citizens, the constituents that aren't getting the service because of challenges of dispatch.
That's right.
And I think it's not by anything other than the intermediary, which is dispatch, which is having that discussion. And I think that's really where we need to come to the table as a unified region. And it's not just Reno Sparks, but as the chief has pointed out, it's Carson City, Story County. I think it's a number of issues in North Lake Tahoe, Douglas. As we discuss these issues, so that we can start acting as a unified region, not just individual self-reliant companies.
And Mr. Chair, for the record, I am going to ask for that to be an item on our next, in the Board of Commissioners, in the BCC meeting. I am going to ask for a report to come back relatively quickly on where we are on the information that's dispatch study that was done, what are the steps we need to take, what are the next steps we need to take, and we've given them enough time to pull that together, and so I think I'm going to ask for it to be on our agenda sooner rather than later, but that is an item for the BCC, not for the
Right.
Fire Board.
I know Commissioner Hartung has been a big-time champion for that for many, many years, so, and I know he had some comments, so I want to turn it over to him really quickly, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I agree. That'll be great, Commissioner Burke. We'll ask for that on the, to make sure that it's on the BCC agenda. It makes absolutely no sense to me to have, when there's technology that can be utilized, it makes no sense to have a human being try to decide which is the closest. You know, a piece of technology can do it so much faster, and it does it without thought of jurisdictional boundaries. Or prejudice, thank you. That's a great way to term it. And the constituents don't care about these complicated jurisdictional boundaries. Somebody needs to show up and assist when somebody's having a heart attack or a home is on fire or whatever the emergency happens to be. So I'm fully supportive, and I'm happy to talk to, and I already have had some brief conversations with some of our counterparts in the city of Sparks, but I'm happy to sit down, Chief, if you want to. I can initiate the conversations, but then we can set up more of a formalized meeting to discuss the particulars and the nuances. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 8.3 is green waste disposal and collection and open burning. I understand we may be getting some rain later this week. Nevertheless, I'm still very, very wary about open burning to the public simply because of what's happening in the western U.S. And I want to avoid a tragedy of even lesser proportions than what's happening in California. So at some point, we need to revisit the entire open burning regulations and approvals. Nevertheless, I think one of the solutions is the green waste disposal program that I've been talking to you about, and I'm very, very appreciative of the health district working with me on the application to use the burn box, which not their fault, EPA's fault, requiring kind of a big application or a big review of using a very, very simple device. Nevertheless, I think you've been copied on correspondence from Mr. Dick. So they're willing to waive the large permit in lieu of a very minor permit fee, which I'm going to move forward on that. So I wanted to announce a soft rollout of our green waste program that on Saturday, October 28th and Saturday, November 18th, we're going to collect green waste at the following stations. Station 221 in Silver Lake, Station 223 in Lemon Valley, and Station 16 on East Lake Boulevard. And we're going to do a soft rollout just to see how many citizens will take advantage of that, who will bring us their green waste, and we'll dispose of it either through chipping or we'll take it to a recycler in the fall. But come the spring, we're very more likely to develop this program in a much bigger way, to where we'll have dumpsters that we could leave in any particular community, and they can fill it with green waste and we'll remove it, much like Carson City does. We'll have collection points, and I'm even working on acquiring some land through the BLM program to where we can establish some acreage to where we'll have a space to do the chipping and the composting and the burning far removed from any populated areas. So I'm very, very excited to get this going out. We'll certainly advertise it through the public, but I hope the public will take advantage of getting rid of their green waste, which they can't possibly put in their 90-gallon waste management can. I do want to mention that Waste Management has agreed to partner with me on helping me with this program. So we do have a corporate sponsor, well, not a sponsor, but a partner, corporate partner, to help with some of the logistics and some of the moving pieces on this. So the goal of the program, again, is to reduce the number of people that actually need to remove their green waste via burning it, and allow an easy way to dispose of it, either bringing it, and perhaps in some cases the district might actually even go pick it up for a small fee. So we'll be working on that over the winter, and I'm very, very excited about getting this done. It has twofold benefits. One, it has the potential to improve our air quality, and certainly has the potential to reduce the risk of fire from pile burning that escapes. This last season in the spring, we had 12 fires from citizens where their pile burns escaped, and that's very, very scary to me. So I eventually would like to see that we have absolutely no pile burning, although the ranchers and farmers certainly need to burn their ditches. That will continue. So no restrictions on agricultural burning. But nevertheless, homeowners who need to get rid of vegetation that just have no easy way to get rid of it, this would be the program that would be the solution to that.
Great. Commissioner Hartung?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chief, I'm fully supportive of this, but I do have one fear of leaving a dumpster or having these sort of green waste dump areas. We had one in Spanish Springs where we have a church now on this piece of property. It was about a 2.5 acre piece of property. And most of the residents used it for what it was designed for, but there were still some who left their washers and dryers and mattresses and old TVs and et cetera, and that's always a concern for me. And the complaint by the neighbors was actually that it became a haven for, surprisingly, rats. One neighbor that was directly next to this particular location right on Rockwell reported that she'd never seen rats before, but she had rats, which was quite surprising. And I actually killed a rat, not in my home, but outside my home one time. He got down into a sprinkler box, and so they are in these places. But that's my only concern, Chief. And I don't know how you stop people from hauling mattresses out there instead of taking them to the transfer station. It's just it's something that we just have to work through and try to figure it out.
One of our ideas on that, Commissioner Hartung, is to actually secure the dumpster location and have specific times to where people could bring green waste.
Ah, wonderful.
So we
a
would
good
have it
idea.
manned with a volunteer or a staff member, have it fenced, and have it open for selected Saturdays during the month.
Great solution. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Herman?
I would say that our chief here has got some great solutions to some pretty big problems, so I really commend you for that. And I'm kind of concerned about the state burns that are coming up down in the southwest part of our county, so I hope they keep an eye on their fires this year. And the other thing I wanted to say is, we've had 2 huge fire years. I mean, in District 5, I can't have no complaints about the fire protection that we have there, and what's gone on there. I don't see where anybody's been left out on a fire situation or a health issue. So I really think you deserve everything that you get, and you probably should have taken that raise. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Herman. All right. Chief, item 8.4.
8.4 is a tabulation that Commissioner Hartung had requested on a year-to-date mutual aid report. So you can see it's not too far from 50-50, maybe 60-40, but nevertheless, mutual aid always seems to, even in a busy year, be relatively an even Steven type of a deal. Obviously, we respond a lot for BLM because we're simply close to some of their jurisdictions. But nevertheless, it's been a very, very active year, and I just want to say thanks to all of our mutual aid partners, not only City of Sparks and City of Reno and Story County and Carson City and North Lake Tahoe, East Fork, who are some of our closest neighbors. Anytime that we've needed help, they've been made an immediate response, and we've done the reciprocal thing back to them. So I think if not for a robust mutual aid system throughout the Sierra front, that we would simply not have had the success that we did.
Great. Chief, Commissioner Hartung?
Just one comment. Very telling statistics, Chief. I really appreciated it. They speak for themselves. Thank you.
All right. Chief, 8-5, please.
8-5, the district has done a thorough investigation of the woodchuck fire, and it was our determination that the fire was caused by backhoe operations at the construction site. Backhoe operations.
Okay.
The backhoe operator made a statement to our fire investigator that he was operating the backhoe, looked over the bucket area and saw the fire. We did find numerous dry chemical fire extinguishers in and around that area where the construction workers attempted to put the fire out. But we would theorize that the backhoe likely hit a rock, which caused sparks. And in that wind, it started the brush on fire and immediately got larger than what the construction crew could extinguish. So again, that was a red flag day. I certainly have formulating a lot of ideas how we can inform the contracting community about safety on those particular days, because we have had a couple of big fires on red flag days. So nevertheless, this fire was accidental, and there's certainly nothing intentional about the operations there, but nevertheless, we're again indeed grateful that no structures were damaged in that, although there was some property loss. There were 2 construction trailers that were filled with traffic cones. I don't have an exact dollar loss on those 2 pieces of equipment, but I would imagine somewhere in between the $10,000 and $15,000 range combined, individual, so combined about $30,000, and I'm aware of one citizen lost some fencing and some trees, but again, no structures were damaged.
Great. Commissioner Hartung?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chief, I just wanted to commend you and our regional partners for the quick response. That could have been a devastating event. We've seen what happens in those interface areas. My question is, though, do we as a board need to revisit requirements on red flag days, or potentially requirements at construction sites? In other words, maybe, and this was completely accidental, but perhaps we need to require, if you're in a wildland interface, you have a permit to build in a wildland interface, you have to have a water truck, period, whether it's a red flag day or not. And, until the structure is basically nearly complete. Not to the point of C of O, of course, because there comes a point where the structure is sort of self-sustaining and there's not things going on outside any longer that could be a cause. But this was completely accidental, but maybe we do need to enact and enable, and everyone's hypersensitive right now. It doesn't take much to look at what happened in California. While I recognize we're not talking about the same thing, the magnitude of the loss is, it's unbelievable to me. And I think everybody is looking to their elected bodies to well, we don't want to hobble the process of construction. I think there may be some things that if we need to discuss them, things that can be done, or you can bring back a series of ideas, perhaps, things that could be enacted and put into code, things that you're just going to, I'm sorry, you're just going to have to do this, because it's not a fact of burning your own construction trailers down. It's the fact of setting an entire area on fire potentially. So I don't know whether I'm overreaching and just being sort of too nervous, but I think it's a conversation that we should have.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. I've been invited to speak to the AGC about actually a different topic, but that would be an excellent venue for me to be able to talk about how this fire started and what contractors can do to make their job site safe. I've always been a proponent of doing public education first before enforcement, because I think most people, the vast majority of people, are responsible and want to do their job safely, but they just may be lacking perhaps information. And so that's a good place to start, but I do believe that we ought to look at red flag days, particularly wind. As you saw in California, it's the wind that keeps me up at night. It's not necessarily any one fire.
Well, and if I may, Mr. Chairman, just the addition of a water truck on the site. Just say, look, you're going to have a water truck on the site. This is something that we want you to have. We want you to have access to, 500 gallons of water, period. Had they had that, and did they have a water truck on the site that they accessed?
I'm not aware of that, Commissioner, but no, I'm sorry, I don't have that.
Yeah, and again, I'm not trying to hobble construction, but maybe that's just one of the things. In a wildland interface, when you're building a subdivision and you're not dealing with those same parameters, I don't think you have the same risks. But when you have a wildland interface, and this was just completely, there's no fault in this whatsoever. There's not an assertion that there's any fault. It's just, it was an accident, completely an accident. But the addition of some means to put out fire other than just, canisters might have been helpful.
Chief, to kind of follow up with Commissioner Hartung's discussion, I mean, would a fire truck at the site been a water truck or a water truck? Would that have been a benefit? I mean, would they have had time in that condition to even, if the water truck was available, for them to hop in and be able to put out the fire or have the skill set to do so?
Yeah, it's always speculation whether or not they'd be able to mobilize it quickly enough, or even be able to roll it over the terrain to attack the fire where it's currently burning. So in that case, establishing a defensible space, or at least a clear area around the construction site, which usually, they're scraped anyway to remove the sagebrush and put in different plant materials. I know that they were doing that, but nevertheless, backhoes and heavy machinery, when they hit a rock, even lawnmowers. I've seen lawnmowers start wildland fires because they hit a rock. I mean, this is just something that everybody needs to be aware of. So I would say that extra caution during a red flag day is certainly prudent. It's something that we could consider writing into our next code cycle. But nevertheless, I'm not sure that a water truck would have helped.
Commissioner Herman had a comment.
Oh, it was just about water trucks, if they ever get required. I know where they can get a lot of water.
Well, no, I think the AGC meeting would be a great interface for you to discuss that issue with a number of builders and developers within the community, and what their thoughts would be to address some of those issues, and then maybe after that discussion with those individuals, bring that back maybe for us to have a further discussion, if there is one that would be warranted, to have something to speak to Commissioner Hartung's request. So, sure.
Chairman. I'm certainly not trying to be dogmatic. It's just a question of, are there things that we can enact?
Absolutely.
And I'm not married to any one particular idea. You just hate to see these kinds of things. Blessedly, this one didn't. It was I don't want to call it a non-event, but comparatively speaking, we got really blessed.
No, yeah. Yeah, there could have been a number of homes. I know Senator, especially and the way the winds were going, Senator Ganser was one of the homes that was backed right up to that, and had a number of her property was damaged. Just luckily it was just landscaping, but it could have been a lot of homes that we would have lost had it not been for. And it was the situation. We had one of our helicopters down. Unable to fight the fires and drop water. We had a number of challenges because of the high winds and the location. So, Commissioner Hartung has a very strong point about what we do in regards to limitations in areas such as that. Maybe identifying areas that are going to be a little bit more high risk. Yeah. All right, Chief, 8B.
8, B, and C are the monthly reports for fire activity and response activity in July. I'll let those reports stand unless there's any
Okay.
specific questions.
Any discussion by the commissioners on those? Commissioner, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I've probably brought this up before, but I continue to be amazed at the level of activity in Spanish Springs and Sun Valley. And it's consistent. If you see the year-to-year totals, they're very similar. And I wonder if we don't need to look at whether or not we need to increase the number of staffing, the number of engines in these areas. Are these two areas that we need to provide more support because they are so, consistently high?
I think the answer is yes, Commissioner Burke-Bigler. I've always believed that you concentrate your resources where your risk is concentrated, and possibly even where your service demand is. We have been experimenting this summer with adding a rescue to the complement at Station 15. Staff is thrilled with that, and it's been very, very effective, not only in being able to handle simultaneous calls, but allowing us to keep Station 14 down south in protecting that community rather than having to come up north and respond into when we get really, really busy up north. So that will be absolutely the next improvement to the service level that the district can make, would be to staff that rescue permanently and base it in Sun Valley to where we have a dual company response out of Station 15.
Commissioner Harton.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I, as you know, Chief, I've been a huge proponent of the rescues. I've referred to them as flex crews, which in Spanish Springs, we get a high number of calls because we have a senior facility, and they're there a lot. That's not all. That's not a suggestion that's the total number of calls, but having a rescue that can flex throughout the region, and I would even say multiple rescues. It would be nice to have 2 rescues, Chief, that can flex throughout the region, and I think it would dramatically improve our ability to respond, to medical emergencies initially, but also when there is an actual fire where you do need more than the complement of an engine, you have 5 men. You got 5 people showing up because you have a rescue, a 2-man, and a 3-man engine, which makes perfect sense. It makes no sense to send the 3-man engine to every single medical call. It just is, it's really almost a waste of resource.
I agree. Mr. Chair, maybe this is something we need to look at as we go into the next budget season. I know we just got into this budget season, but maybe this is something we really need to consider as we're looking at additional fire stations for the regional plan and how that's all going to be funded and what do we need? And so maybe this is something we need to really add to that discussion that the chairman brought up earlier are these 2 areas that we need to permanently staff a 2-man, if you will, ambulance-ready service so that we can take care of high numbers out there. When you look at the rest of the statistics, it just fascinates me how many are in those 2 areas. And I realize that certainly in Sun Valley, there's a huge population. And in Spanish Springs, you have, I think you actually have 2 senior centers out there. One's hospital, and then I think there's a senior facility, a nursing home type facility out there also.
Yeah.
Which I think certainly is going to drive those numbers up, but still, it's significant that these 2 areas are always consistently high, and that worries me, that we may not have enough protection out there.
Yeah, and I'm just doing some quick math here, and you're absolutely right, Madam Vice Chair, is that, when you do some quick math and you take out the outliers, on average, our other stations, excluding Sun Valley, and Spanish Springs 15 and 17. On average, our stations run about 47 calls a month. They're 4 and 5 times the amount for those two stations in regards to call volume. And if you look in specifically the type of call volume, it's emergency medical services, which has always been about a good chunk of our calls anyways. And then, you know, but taking that back just from just the call volume, but then you look at how we're going to see natural growth within our community and where available spaces. If you look on a map today, where available spaces is really in the North Valley. The South Valleys and our urban core, for the most part, are filled. And after conversations with the University of Nevada, Reno, and Mr. Bonifant and different discussions there, you know, there's not a whole lot of extra space we have in the South Valleys left to really develop. Really, our available land for Washoe County goes north. And that's Sparks and Spanish Springs areas out into Winnemucca Ranch and those valleys. We also have Cold Springs and those. So as we see that growth over the next 10 to 20 years, you're going to want stations out there that are going to be suitable. And right now, having just those few stations that run so many calls, I think in the interim, until we can get more stations out there, you need to start looking about how you staff those and staff those adequately to really satisfy the needs of that community. Because if that station is out, on a call, you know, 5 times more than any other station, that means we're pulling units from inside the district, Station 14 and different things, up further into the district that might be taking away from protection further within the district down south. And so we're robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, many times. And I think we need to address that going forward. So, Commissioner Hartung.
Yeah, and you're spot on, Mr. Chairman, in my opinion, and thus the rescues that can flex in and out and cover, instead of moving a full engine company around, you can flex with a rescue. And to that end also, one of the things that I think that we need to look at moving forward is we don't build stations with 2 bays anymore. They always have to have a 3rd bay that can accommodate a rescue, which is could be part of that complement. And moving forward, I was having a conversation yesterday with a builder, and we were talking about the rising costs for building everything from schools to public facilities, and so you look at what it costs when you're building a station with, let's just say, only 2 bays. The cost differential to build a 3rd bay is negligible compared to the additional cost that you would have to expend sometime in the future to upgrade that station.
Yeah, we're seeing that. All right. Seeing no further discussion on 8. At this time, do we have any public comments, Simon?
Mr. Chair, we have Christina Conti.
Okay. Ms. Conti.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chief Moore, Christina Conti for the record. I'm the EMS Oversight Program Manager. I wanted to take you back to 8.2 really quickly in the discussion that you had. This region, if you recall, put together an EMS strategic plan, and all the partner agencies with 2 representatives from both dispatch and operations were a part of that process. AVL is listed in there 2 different places, so I was very excited for Chief Moore's comments, and I'm looking to him now to champion this effort with me. We just completed a survey of the AVL capabilities within this region. Does dispatch see them? Are they currently dispatching their units based on it? And so we have begun the process right now, so I wanted to bring that to your attention for the comments that you had made and the possible next steps from you, that this is something that I look forward to working with the chief on, and maybe Truckee Meadows can take the lead with these projects with me. So thank you so much.
Great, Ms. Conti. Thank you. Any further public comment?
There's no more.
All right. Looking for a motion at this time. I have a motion from Commissioner Hartung, second by Madam Vice Chair. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, Chief, we are on to item 9.
Item 9 is discussion of possible approval to authorize staff to negotiate the sale or lease of property at 12300 Old Virginia Road, APN 140-010-04, currently Station 14, for possible action.
Okay.
As you're aware, the new construction for Station 14 is underway, so staff recommends disposal of the existing site to coincide with the completion of the new station. It's certainly not a piece of ground that we need because it's surrounded by the city of Reno. So really, we're in a position there where we are not in a good position to serve our citizens. Nevertheless, it's in the middle of a commercial area. We do have a willing buyer, so staff is looking for direction and approval to begin disposal of this piece of property. What we recommend is that we begin with an appraisal so we know exactly what the market value is. The options for the board would be to sell it outright or to possibly lease it. Staff would recommend that we sell it so that the proceeds that we would get from the sale of that would offset the construction cost of the new Station 14.
Commissioner Harton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chief, and I have no problem with selling this piece of property. As with all real estate and these types of transactions, no different than stock transactions, timing is everything. And so when we get an appraisal, what I'd also like to do is I'd like to look forward to see what people think, what appraisers think, and professional real estate professionals believe the property might be worth, and it may be in our best interest to wait a short time before we do sell it. It's just again, timing is everything. Having bought and sold lots of things throughout my life and never have been able to pick the top or the bottom of the market, but timing is everything, and it's always good to get a lot of advice before you just sort of march forward. I know that when we were talking about selling this piece of property originally, the property has now increased in value just in the couple of years or the year and a half that we've had this conversation, and so I'd like to maximize our returns. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I have public comment.
Yeah, thank you. Madam Clerk, will you please call upon comment?
Mr. Ken Crater.
Good morning, Mr. Crater.
Good morning. Thank you. For the record, my name is Ken Crater. The Cardenas family and their partnership group who own the Southtown Crossing Shopping Center has long supported your efforts for the new fire station, and we think it's great what the chief has been able to accomplish in the last couple of years. But in terms of the sale of this property, I do want to point out a couple things. And first of all is NRS 244.281. This states that a Board of County Commissioners may sell or lease any real property owned by the county without complying with the provisions of NRS 244.282 or 244.283 to a person who owns real property located adjacent to the real property to be sold or leased if the board has determined by resolution that the sale will be in the best interest of the county and the real property is a remnant that was separated from its original parcel due to the construction of a street, alley, avenue, or other thoroughfare or portion thereof, flood control facility, or other public facility. And I think this is important because the Cardenas family basically owns all of the property surrounding the entire fire station.
Can we get the overhead, please?
And because of the realignment of Old Virginia Road that was required also by the construction of the new freeway and the off-ramp, we indeed have remnants of property that we can't develop because of their location and configuration. We've been a great neighbor, we believe, with the fire station. We've gone out of our way to try and improve traffic flow in this area. We constructed a free right-hand turn lane from the Monty Ranch Parkway westbound to Old Virginia northbound. We constructed dual southbound left turn lanes, all in the interest of trying to promote better traffic flow in the area, because we know the challenges that the fire department has had in trying to get in and out of this area. The other issue is the development of this fire station parcel. There are some issues. One is the capacity of that driveway. It's basically at capacity right now, and we have plans to construct a $400,000 to $500,000 roundabout to actually deal with that situation. And if we were able to purchase this parcel from the county, I think it would have much greater value integrated into our shopping center than it ever would as a standalone parcel. You've got utility issues. There's a major sewer interceptor line that runs down Old Virginia Road that has to be dealt with. and coupled with the access and need for the roundabout, it'd be a significant burden to any other developer or owner to try and develop this property. So we have made a longstanding offer to the county on this piece, $15 per square foot or appraised value, which is ever is higher, and we certainly want to make sure the county gets good dollar value for this property.
Thank you, Mr. Crater.
But we think there's a lot of value in working with us to achieve the highest value.
Thank you, Mr. Crater.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Any further public comment? Madam Clerk, any further public comment?
No, sir.
Thank you. All right, at this time, looking for a motion.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we move forward and look at all possibilities to just discuss them and you know, what, we have a fiduciary responsibility to taxpayers, and I recognize Mr. Crater's position, but I also want to make sure that we understand exactly all the parameters. So my motion is for the chief to move forward.
Okay, I have a motion to move forward with the sale.
I'll second
Further
that.
discuss-
I'm assuming that you're following the motion as written in the staff report. It says, move to authorize staff to negotiate the sale or lease of the property at 12300 Old Virginia Road, APN 104-101-04.
So let's stop here for a second. Okay, Commissioner Hartung, would you like to restate your motion?
I would, Mr. Chairman. I'd like a little more information from some real estate professionals in terms of where this is going, as opposed to, and I certainly would like to see an appraisal. So my motion would be that the chief goes out and gets an appraisal and then some professional opinions, and then brings that back to us as a future agenda item.
Okay, so you're authorizing chief for appraisal and opinions on property, not to negotiate the sale, correct?
That would be my, I want to see what the property is worth right now,
Okay.
and what real estate professionals. That's my opinion, Mr. Chair. This is in your district, so if you feel differently, I mean, I'm okay
You're
with that,
entitled to
too.
any motion you'd like to make, sir.
Yes, sir, I know. That's why I made that one.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second it.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, Chief, so you've got your direction in regards to the sale of the property.
Yes, sir. Item 10 is Commissioners, Fire Chief's announcements, requests for information, topics for future agendas, and statements relating to items not on the agenda. No discussion among commissioners will take place on this item. I have no further announcements, Mr. Chair.
Commissioners?
I have nothing further.
Nothing further?
Just one other thing, Mr. Chair, not one other thing, but it would be nice, Chief, if we bring back, and I know we've talked about this, a discussion in terms of how we're going to update the regional plan and what fire stations potentially could look like in the future and should look like. Our minimum standards, in other words. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. And Chief, you know, the one discussion that we've had is a further discussion on the AVL and dispatch. I'd like
Sir.
to get that as soon as possible so we can have that discussion with the board here. Okay, seeing nothing further from the commissioners, we are on to our final public comment. Are there any public comments signed in, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir, we have Sam Dene.
Mr. Dene.
Sam, DNA, the heart and soul and the body of mind of Reno government. I am Sam Dene. I've been to virtually every county commission meeting for the last 20 years, and I've spoken 2,427 times and testified at this podium right here, more than virtually all the other citizens in the community added together, at least when it comes to talking about important things. I am an Air Force Academy graduate. I have the gravitas in the background, the young lady knows that, that qualifies me to be up at the dais. No, I should be governor. Everybody knows that, but we have this problem with the vote rigging system, but I won't go into that right now. And I don't know if we should continue the meeting because we don't have that sheriff's deputy over there protecting me. Where's the sheriff's deputy who's supposed to be protecting me? Oh, there he is. Oh, okay, we can go on. Just kidding. Here we have the fire, nice smiley face. We have the fire operation going here now, and I have not heard anything spoken at these podiums, other than what I've said briefly, about the fact that the Air Guard, the Nevada Air National Guard now has 2, or maybe more, 2 firefighting C-130s. As a background, I was the driving force that saved the Air National Guard. They would no longer be here because they wanted to get F-16 fighters back in 1997, and I ordered Washington, didn't pull any strings, I just ordered Washington to give them C-130s, cargo planes. And then along with that, I ordered them to also provide a few firefighting C-130s. It took 12 years of them dragging their feet, stepping on pea ants, for all these different reasons. They didn't want to give them firefighting C-130s to protect you, to protect your houses and properties against fires. Finally, a year ago, more or less, they got some firefighting C-130s. And if you don't know what that is, that's those cargo planes that you see flying around now and then. Nice, quiet cargo planes. It also provided 300 more jobs to the community than they would have had if they had gone with the F-16 fighter planes. And if they got in the fighter planes, they would be gone, because fighter planes don't belong in the middle of cities anymore. Maybe never did. At any rate, I want to give the Air National Guard kudos for finally, I want to give the Air National Guard kudos and compliments for finally, after all the years, following Sam's directive and getting some firefighting C-130s. Thank you. Thank you over there. Nice.
All right, seeing no further public comment,
There's no more.
thank you. We are adjourned as a Board of Fire Commissioners. Thank you very much, everyone. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break and change around, and we will be started shortly.